Hi, I'm Janice Switlo. Today I'm going to take you through three periods of time in British history. And I think you can kind of relate to the examples going back then in terms of how Indigenous nationals are being treated today in Canada. So going back to AD 77, under a title called Subverting the Britons. From the first, Britannia proved a difficult province to control, but Gnaeus Julius Agricola, Roman governor between AD 77 and 84, is credited with devising a very subtle method of reconciling the Britons to Roman rule. He Romanized the province and so offered Britons the advantages of Roman life: towns, water supplies, roads, imported luxuries, homes heated by hypocausts, which was a form of central heating, public baths, theaters, and other entertainments such as gladiatorial combat. The contrast between this comparatively pampered existence and the rough, often uncomfortable life they had led before appealed to many Britons, who came to live in the towns, wear Roman togas, eat Roman food, and educate their children in Roman schools. Today we have a mass exodus of Indigenous nationals into the cities, the reserves and their homes. Those areas of full jurisdiction that have been reserved out of any permissions given to the Crown by treaty have been impoverished, have been underfunded. They've been primed, and that's another episode, they've been primed to say, there's no future for me here, I need to go to the cities. It's no different than what was done back in AD 77 when the Romans were having difficulties coming up with a way to take over Britannia. Moving ahead, in 1746, it was the subjugation of the Highlands. A brutal process of pacification began in Scotland after the defeat of Bonnie Prince Charlie, who was 1720 to 1788, at Culloden in 1746. Highland dress was outlawed, and so was the hereditary jurisdiction over clans by their chiefs. Scottish politics all but vanished, as MPs preferred not to risk their careers by raising Scottish issues at Westminster. Then there's a collapse of kelp prices after 1815 destroyed the remaining economic power of the Highlands, and the clearances that followed replaced much of the population with sheep, literally sheep. Paradoxically, the intellectual and business ferment known as the Scottish Enlightenment was underway in Edinburgh at the same time. By the end of the 18th century, Scotland was generating 50 times more money than it had at the beginning. Similar things that have happened, outlawing hereditary governance structures, interfering in self-governance, and people being made to pay. Me, for example, right? Because I saw Indigenous nations and spoke up and spoke of sovereignty, I was made to pay in terms of my own career options by doing so. Everyone follows suit. Every lawyer is doing Section 35 stuff, right? Because that's where they're going to make money, right? I refuse to do Section 35 stuff. And, overnight, my car is repossessed. My life insurance payments are reversed. I mean, that's another story for another time. But my point in quoting this is, despite what occurred there, they actually were able to, as a result of Scottish people coming together, improve their circumstances. They were generating 50 times more money than it had at the beginning of what was going on. So they overcame, and they became better able to generate their own income as a result of responding to this subjugation. And I have one further period of time to bring to your attention. This is back in 1880, the First Boer War. And at this point, the Boers had defeated British forces. And the government signed the Treaty of Pretoria in 1881. Now this gave South African Republic its independence. But foreign policy was to be handled by the British government. And if you look up the treaty, you read the terms, you'll see that in there. It's being reserved, the Crown has reserved this right to foreign policy. That's international relations. And again, that's in, that treaty's 1881. Take a look at the treaties that the Crown entered into with Indigenous nations in what she terms Canada. There is no reserving of foreign policy, nothing of the sort. There is nothing that takes away from Indigenous nations from engaging in full use of their economic sovereignty, of their foreign policy, of engaging with other countries and other nations in the world. And that's all I have to say.